My brother's wife called me a freeloader and demands that I stop asking her husband for money. She didn't know I own the company her husband works at, and I sign his paychecks. I built my company when I was 24. That was 9 years ago. The company now has over 60 employees, 3 warehouse locations, and contracts with retailers in 4 states. I don't talk about it. I don't wear expensive clothes. I drive a truck I bought used 5 years ago because it runs fine, and I like it. My brother Fitz is 4 years younger than me, and I gave him a job at my company 3 years ago when he was struggling to find stable work. I brought him in as an operations coordinator, and he turned out to be great at it. Within 2 years, I promoted him to regional manager overseeing one of the warehouse locations. He earns a solid salary with benefits, and he earned the promotion on his own merit. I didn't hand it to him, he worked for it. But I gave him the opportunity, and we both know that. At the company, Fitz goes by his full name, and most of the staff doesn't know we're related because we have different last names. I took our mother's name when I started the business for personal reasons, and Fitz kept our father's. The only people there who know we're brother and sister are my operations director and my accountant. That's how I wanted it, and Fitz respected it because he didn't want people treating him differently either. Last year, Fitz married a woman named Audra. I was happy for him. Audra worked in pharmaceutical sales, and from what Fitz told me, she was driven and independent, and came from a family that valued status and professional achievement. The first time I met her was at a dinner Fitz hosted at his apartment a month before the wedding. I showed up in jeans and a flannel shirt because I came straight from the warehouse where I'd been helping unload a late shipment. Audra looked at me when I walked in, and the first thing she asked was what I did for work. I told her I was in packaging. She asked if I worked at a warehouse. I said yes. She nodded and didn't ask a follow-up question. That was the first sign. The wedding was small and nice, and I paid for the catering as my gift to Fitz. I told the caterer to send the invoice directly to me and to not mention it to anyone. Fitz knew. Audra didn't. After the wedding, I started seeing Audra at family dinners about twice a month. Each time her attitude toward me got a little worse. At the second dinner, she asked me if I was still at the warehouse. I said yes. She asked how long I'd been doing that kind of work. I told her a while. She looked at Fitz, and then back at me, and said it must be nice having a brother who helps out. I told her I wasn't sure what she meant. She said Fitz told her he helped me out sometimes, and she just wanted to make sure I was getting on my feet. Fitz wasn't in the room when she said this. I didn't correct her. I just ate my dinner. The next month, she made a comment at the table about how people who don't invest in their careers end up stuck in the same place forever. She looked at me when she said it. My mother was sitting right there, and she gave me a look because my mother knows exactly what I built. I shook my head slightly, and my mother stayed quiet. The month after that, Audra told Fitz in front of me that they needed to stop lending me money. I had never borrowed $1 from Fitz in my life. Fitz looked confused and told her he didn't lend me money. She told him she saw a transfer in their account to a name she didn't recognize and assumed it was going to me. Fitz told her that was his car insurance auto payment. Audra didn't apologize. She just moved on to another topic. Then, at Easter dinner, Audra sat across from me and told me about a job opening at a distribution center near her office. She said the pay was decent and that it might be a step up for me. She said she could put in a word with the hiring manager if I wanted. She was offering to help me get an entry-level job at someone else's warehouse while I owned a company with 60 employees and 3 locations. My mother put her fork down. I told my mother it was fine. I looked at Audra and told her I appreciated it, but I was okay where I was. Audra told me that being okay with where I was might be the problem. 2 weeks after Easter, I got a call from Fitz. He sounded stressed. He told me Audra had been pressuring him to cut me off financially. He told her again he wasn't giving me money, but she didn't believe him. She told him she thought he was hiding payments to me and that it was affecting their ability to save for a house. Fitz told me he didn't know what to do because every time he explained it, she accused him of covering for me. I told Fitz to bring Audra to the office on Friday. He asked why. I told him I wanted to show her something. That Friday, Fitz drove Audra to the main warehouse location. I was already there. I met them at the front entrance in my usual work clothes. Audra walked in and looked around and asked Fitz why we were at his workplace. Fitz told her I wanted to give her a tour. I walked them through the warehouse floor where 60 employees were working. I walked them past the loading docks where 3 trucks were being packed with product for a retail chain delivery. I walked them through the office wing where my operations director and my sales team were on calls. I walked them to the end of the hallway where there was a door with a nameplate on it. My full name, owner. Audra read the nameplate. She looked at me. She looked at Fitz. She looked back at the nameplate. I reached past her and turned the handle. I pushed the door open and stepped to the side. Come on in, I said. Audra didn't move right away. She stood there in the hallway like her feet were glued to the floor, still processing the nameplate. I didn't push her. I just held the door open and waited. After a few seconds, she took a breath and walked in. She moved slowly, like she was entering a room she wasn't sure she was allowed to be in. The office isn't big, but everything on the walls tells the story. On the left, there's a framed copy of the original business license I filed 9 years ago. Next to it is the incorporation certificate with the state seal on it, and on the wall behind my desk, there's a photo of me on the day we opened the first warehouse. 24 years old in a hard hat and orange vest. Audra looked at each one. Her face gave me nothing. Fitz stayed in the doorway with his arms crossed. He was letting me run this. I walked around to the other side of my desk and sat down in my chair. I folded my hands on the desk and looked at Audra. This is where I work, Audra. This is what I do. Every day. She didn't respond. Not right away. The room was so quiet I could hear the hum of the lights above us and the distant sound of a forklift moving on the warehouse floor 2 hallways over. Then she laughed. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was shaky and high, and it sounded like it came out of her before she could stop it. A nervous, disbelieving laugh. You're joking, she said. She turned to Fitz in the doorway. Fitz, tell me she's joking. Fitz didn't smile. He just shook his head slowly and said, she built this before I even started working here, Audra. She gave me my shot. The laugh died on her face like a candle someone blew out. The disbelief drained away and something heavier took its place. She moved to the chair on the other side of my desk and sat down without waiting for me to offer it. She lowered herself into it like her legs just didn't want to hold her up anymore. So every time I said those things at dinner, you just sat there. I nodded. I did. Her jaw tightened. I could see her going back through every dinner, every comment, every time she offered me a job, replaying all of it with this new piece of information. Why didn't you say something? She asked. Her voice was quieter now. Because I wanted to see what what kind of person you were without knowing. Her eyes got glassy. Not full tears, but that shine you get right before. For a second, I really thought she was going to apologize. I could see it forming. Her lips parted slightly and her shoulders dropped just a little. And then something in her face changed. It was like watching a door close. The softness disappeared. Her jaw set. And instead of looking at me, she turned in her chair and looked straight at Fitz. "You let me embarrass myself," she said. "For months. You sat there at those dinners and you let me look like a fool." The whole energy of the room flipped. One second it felt like we were about to get somewhere honest, and the next second she'd found a new target. She wasn't sorry. She was angry. And she was aiming all of it at Fitz. His arms dropped to his sides. "I told you I wasn't giving her money. I told you that over and over, Audra. You didn't believe me. That's not the point," she said. She stood up. "You could have told me the truth. You could have sat me down and told me who she was and what she did for you. But you didn't. That's not protecting your sister, Fitz. That's setting up your wife." She walked out of the office and her heels clicked down the hallway. Fitz stood there frozen, looking at the empty hallway like he was about to run after her. I spoke before he could move. "Don't chase her yet. Let her sit with it." That evening, I called Fitz, and he sounded like someone who'd been sitting in the same spot for hours. He told me Audra had walked into the house ahead of him, gone straight to their bedroom and closed the door. Not slammed it, just closed it, which honestly sounded worse. Through the door, she told him she thought we'd planned this together to humiliate her. He said she was talking about skipping Sunday dinner. Audra wasn't just upset. She was already making moves. I called my mother. Nancy told me Audra had already called her, said she felt ambushed, asked if Nancy knew. Nancy told her yes. She'd always known. Audra had told Nancy it wasn't fair that everyone knew except her. Audra wasn't pulling back. She was building a case, a story where the three of us had kept her in the dark on purpose to watch her fall. From the outside, to someone who didn't know the full story, it could almost sound believable. Because technically we did know, and technically we didn't tell her. But there's a difference between hiding something and just not correcting someone who never bothered to ask the right questions. I called Fitz back. Audra needs to be there Sunday. If she doesn't come, she's going to keep telling herself a story where she's the victim and we're the villains. She'll tell her mother. She'll tell her friends. That version is going to get harder to undo the longer she sits alone with it. I'm not going to let it become the truth in this family. He was quiet. Then he said, "I'll get her there." Sunday afternoon, I pulled into my mother's driveway a little after 2. I let myself in through the side door and found Nancy at the stove already working on the roast. The house smelled like garlic and rosemary. I put my bag down and started pulling plates from the cabinet. Nancy watched me for a moment and then said, "Audra called me this morning." I stopped with 2 plates in my hands. "She's coming, but she's bringing something." I turned around. "Bringing what?" "I don't know. She just said she had something to share with the family." A knot started forming in the center of my chest. I knew right then she wasn't coming to apologize. She was coming with ammunition. The food was ready by 3. At 3:15, Fitz's car pulled up. Fitz got out first, then Audra. She was dressed sharply, like she was going to a work meeting. Black pants, fitted blouse, hair pulled back neat, and she was carrying a folder, a plain manila folder, held flat against her chest like it was important. Nancy opened the door before they knocked. Audra greeted Nancy politely, a small smile, a nod. She stepped inside, and her eyes found me sitting in the living room. She gave me a nod, just a nod, no words. Then she walked past me toward the dining room like she already knew what she was going to do when she got there. Fitz came in behind her looking like a man who'd held his breath the whole drive over. We all moved to the dining room. Nancy uncovered the food. Nobody picked up a fork. We just sat there, the 4 of us, with full plates we hadn't touched, and a silence that felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Audra placed the folder on the table in front of her. She rested both hands on top. She looked around the table, first at Nancy, then at Fitz, then at me. Then she said, "Before we start, I want to say something." Nobody moved. She opened the folder. Inside were printed pages, maybe 8 or 10 of them, all stacked neatly. She picked up the first one and held it so we could see it. A screenshot of a public business filing. She read from it. The incorporation date, the registered agent name, which was my full name, the business address, which was the address of the main warehouse. She read each piece slowly and clearly, like she was presenting evidence in a courtroom. Then she put it down and pulled out another page. A record from a loan database. The kind of thing that shows up in public filings when a small business takes on certain types of financing. She slid it across the table toward me. It stopped right next to my plate. Her voice was steady. "Your company took a small business loan 3 years ago. The same year Fitz started working there." She paused. "I want to know if Fitz co-signed that loan." The room went completely still. I could hear the clock on Nancy's wall ticking. I could hear someone's lawnmower running 3 houses down. Fitz looked down at the page. "I didn't co-sign anything." His voice was firm, but I could hear the confusion underneath it. Audra didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on me. "Then why was the loan taken the same month you were hired?" "Because it looks like you needed the money to pay his salary." And there it was, the play. In Audra's new version, I didn't give Fitz a job out of kindness. I took out a loan because I couldn't afford him. I needed Fitz, not the other way around. I knew exactly what that loan was. It was for the build-out of the second warehouse location. Permits, contractor fees, shelving systems, loading dock modifications. Fitz was already on payroll for 4 months before I applied for it. The dates were close on paper, close enough for someone looking for a connection to find one, but the actual timeline didn't support what she was trying to say. She'd done just enough research to find something that looked like a question mark. She wasn't done. She reached into the folder and pulled out another page, a screenshot from a professional networking site. I knew before she turned it around what she'd found. Years ago, when I was 23, before I even started the company, I made a profile on one of those sites because someone told me it was important for networking. I listed my title as warehouse coordinator because that's what I was. I never went back and updated it. I honestly forgot it existed. She turned the page around so everyone could see it. The profile photo was old, my hair was shorter, and right there under my name, it said warehouse coordinator. She tapped the page once with her finger. "You told me you worked in packaging. Your own profile says coordinator. So, which is it? Because it seems like you've been telling different stories to different people." Nancy shifted in her chair. Audra had found something that, on the surface, looked like a contradiction. It wasn't one, but it looked like one. Fitz leaned forward. "Audra, she built the company. The profile is old. She made that thing years before any of this existed." She held up one hand, palm out. "I'm not talking to you right now, Fitz. I'm I'm talking to her. She looked at me. If you're really the owner and you really built all of this, why did you lie to me? Why did you say you worked in packaging? Why did you let me think you were struggling? The room was so quiet I could hear the ice settling in the water glasses. I opened my mouth to answer, but before I got a single word out, Nancy spoke. Because she wanted to see if you'd treat her with respect, even if she wasn't impressive to you. Nancy's voice was calm and clear. There was no anger, but there was no softness either. Audra turned to face her slowly. So, this was a test? You were all testing me? Nancy didn't flinch. Nobody tested you, Audra. You tested yourself. Every dinner, every comment, every time you looked at my daughter like she was beneath you. That was your test. And you failed it every single time. Her lower lip tightened. Her eyes got wet. Not full tears, but that glassy look that comes right before. For about 2 seconds, she looked like a woman who had just been told something she couldn't argue with, but she pushed through it. She blinked hard, twice, and she straightened her back. That's not fair, she said. You don't get to judge me for not knowing something you deliberately hid. I was trying to help. I offered her a job. I was trying to be supportive. I saw someone in this family who I thought was stuck and I tried to do something about it. She looked at me. I was trying to look out for Fitz. That's what a wife does. And I could feel the room shifting. Nancy's comment about testing, even though it was true, gave Audra a frame. A way to make this about what we did to her instead of what she did to me. She'd reframed her months of insults and condescending job offers into concern, into being a good wife. And if you didn't know the full story, you might actually believe her. I looked at Fitz. He was looking down at the table. I looked at Nancy. Her jaw was tight. If I didn't speak right now, Audra's version was going to harden into fact. So I took a breath. I didn't raise my voice. I just started talking. The catering at your wedding, Audra. I paid for it. Every plate, every appetizer, the cake. I told the caterer to send the bill directly to me and to never mention it to anyone. Fitz knew because I told him it was my gift. You didn't know because I didn't need you to. Audra blinked. Once, then twice. She turned her head slowly and looked at Fitz. Fitz nodded. Just once. A small dip of his chin that said, yes, it's true. Her mouth opened and closed and opened again. Like she kept reaching for words and finding nothing there. I kept going. That small business loan you found. I took it to build out our second warehouse. It had nothing to do with Fitz's salary. He was already on payroll for 4 months before I applied for that loan. I can show you the dates. I have every record. Her eyes dropped to the page she'd slid across the table earlier. She stared at it like it had changed since she put it there. It hadn't. She just didn't have the full story when she printed it. The old profile you found online, I made that when I was 23, a year before I started the company. I never updated it because I don't care about profiles. I care about running my business. She didn't look up. I paused. You asked why I didn't tell you. Here's why. When I met you for the first time, before you even said hello, you asked me what I did for a living. And when I said packaging, you stopped being interested in me. You decided right there who I was. Not because of anything I did, because of what I sounded like. Every dinner after that, you talked down to me. You offered me jobs I didn't need. You told my brother to stop giving me money he never gave me. You called me a freeloader in this house, at this table, in front of my own mother. I didn't hide anything from you, Audra. You never asked. You assumed. And every time you assumed, you chose the version of me that made you feel better about yourself. The room went completely silent. Nancy had tears running down her cheeks. Quiet tears. Fitz was staring at his hands in his lap. Audra was sitting perfectly still. Her face wasn't sharp or controlled or ready. It was just still. Empty almost. 10 seconds passed. Then she said something very quietly. I didn't know. Her voice was small. I nodded slowly. I know you didn't, but that's my point. You didn't know and you still treated me like I was nothing. What does that tell you about yourself? She didn't answer. She just sat there. Then she reached for the folder. She gathered the loose pages, stacked them, lined up the edges, and closed the folder. She put it in her lap. Her hands were shaking. Then Fitz spoke. He was still looking at his hands. Audra, she's my sister. She gave me a chance when nobody else would. I was struggling. I couldn't find anything stable. I was sending out applications every week and getting nothing back, and she called me one day and asked if I wanted to come work with her. She didn't ask for anything in return. She didn't tell anyone we were related. She didn't hang it over my head. She just let me work and prove myself. And you tried to turn her into a problem I needed to cut out. Audra looked at Fitz. Really looked at him. And for the first time, she didn't argue. She didn't redirect. She sat there with the folder on her lap and her shaking hands, and she didn't say a single word for what felt like a long time. Then she said, I think I need to go home. Her voice was quiet and flat. She stood up. She pushed her chair back slowly and picked up her purse. She held the folder against her side. She didn't look at Nancy. She didn't look at me. She just turned and walked toward the front door, her steps slower than when she came in. She got to the door and put her hand on the handle, and then she stopped. She turned around. She looked at me across the length of my mother's hallway. Her eyes were red. I'm sorry, she said. Her voice cracked on the second word. I don't know if that's enough, but I'm sorry. Then she opened the door and walked out. Fitz stayed in his chair. Are you okay? He asked. I nodded. Nancy reached across the table and her hand found mine, and she squeezed once without saying anything. I squeezed back. The roast had gone cold. Nobody moved to clear it. The clock kept ticking. Outside, a dog barked. Nobody said anything.